everybody, welcome to the video. Before we get started with the video, I just want to let you guys know that there were some issues with audio syncing in this video. So please understand that that is going to be something with this video that you will probably notice. We're going to do better the next time. I did this on my iPhone 16 Pro Max, and this was actually the first time that I did something like this. So I do apologize about that. We will be better in the future, but this content was too good that I couldn't let it go to pass. So enjoy the video. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CEO Sports Show. My name is Chris. I am your host. Today, I have with me joining me Okoye from Okoye Media. He is a boxing trainer, boxing promoter, and he is also joining the Kretschman Media page. He will be covering boxing for Kretschman Media. It's a tremendous honor to have you a part of the page. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work that you do. And let everybody know, for the people who don't know, let them know more about yourself.
Appreciate it first and foremost. Chris and I worked together when he was doing the Cowboys beat, so always followed his work. He followed mine, so I appreciate you bringing me on the Kretschman as well. From a boxing standpoint, man, I've been boxing since I was a kid. Everybody who follows Okoye Media kind of knows that I kind of integrate boxing into the show, but not as much as some of the fans would like. So this was a way for us to kind of like give the fans what they wanted in regards to the boxing content without totally revamping my channel, but also giving them something new as well with the twist from Kretschman Media. So I'm happy to be doing it. And for those who haven't seen anything that I've done, you can go onto my channel and look at some of the old content that I've done. But just to give you an understanding, I'm an analytical person by nature, so I break down everything. I break down the way people walk, talk, whoever, right? I've been known for breaking down football, namely with the Dallas Cowboys. But I've also broken down several big fights and successfully predicted how those fights would turn out, i.e. Crawford, Spence. I broke that fight down before the fight and after the fight, and was pretty accurate with that. Canelo and Triple G, I got some videos out there for that. Went viral a couple times in the boxing space. Shout out to YSM Sports as well. You can find some content there. But I definitely have a stronger passion for boxing than football, believe it or not. It's just that content-wise, it's a lot more. I've been in the football space for so long that a lot of people just happen to know me for that. But I love boxing. That's what I do, man. I still promote fights, as he said, still manage fighters, and I train fighters as well.
Absolutely. And so obviously there's a lot going on in the boxing world. In a few weeks here, we have one of the biggest fights that we've seen over the past 10 years with Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez fighting. How do you think the fight between Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez will play out?
To be honest, man, like this is one of the first fights in a long time that I can remember anyway, where it's truly a 50-50 fight, because you got Terence Crawford, who I think has a deeper bag of tricks. You know, he has a lot more tools offensively than Canelo does. So he can switch hit, he can go southpaw, and he's really a faster, jittery fighter that has very good footwork. So if he fights his fight, then he can give Canelo problems, because Canelo struggled with guys like a Bivol and guys who just move around a lot. Lara, if you want to look at a slick southpaw and how that played out. The difference is those guys are slick fighters. Crawford isn't a slick fighter per se, although he has very good footwork. A lot of it is used to close distance so he can attack you. So he's an offensive fighter, not so much slick in a defensive, because slick is usually a defensive fighter when you think about a slick fighter. Crawford is slick offensively. You know, he's slick when he's trying to hurt you. So that's what's in Crawford's favor. And if he fights his fight, that could be a very difficult fight for Canelo points-wise. Canelo, however, is just blunt force trauma, good head movement, great pressure. So you have the proverbial great boxer versus the great pressure fighter. That's been something that's been going on in boxing since, you know, Sugar Ray Robinson, Jake LaMotta. You know what I mean? So that's just those styles will definitely pull the best out of each other. So it depends on who establishes what early and who gets hurt early. Because if Canelo can establish his body work and can cut off the ring early, he can make it a fight for Crawford, where now Crawford's movement and his ability to take angles might not work as well in his favor. So this is truly a 50-50 fight. The one thing that Canelo has in his favor that I think just tipped it into his favor, and he did it at the right time, He brought Boots into his camp. So Jaron Ennis just sparred with Canelo. And out of everyone that I know that's active right now, as far as switch hitters and boxers, and then boxers that are around the 147, 154 weight division, like a Crawford, Boots is one of the closest things to Crawford that you can get because he can switch hit. He has power in both hands, and he's good from any boxing style that he chooses to deploy. So if I was trying to get prepared for Crawford, that's the guy I would call, and Canelo definitely did that. So it shows that Canelo is trying to find that edge. Who's gonna, win that night? I really couldn't tell you at this point, but I can say that Canelo's doing all the right things to make sure he's as prepared as he can be, and I think Crawford has some tricks up his sleeve that Canelo hasn't seen before. So, it's who will win, good big man or good little man. Usually they say good big man beats good little man every day of the week, but this should be interesting. It should be interesting.
Now, like the way I look at this is Terence Crawford beating Canelo, I think would be such a great feat that I think that solidifies him as the best boxer post Floyd Mayweather. Do you think that is accurate? Do you think that if Crawford were to beat Canelo, he'd be the best fighter post Floyd?
I would say I would have to agree. He would be the best post Floyd if he wins this fight, just because of the strength of competition and the name that Canelo has. But when you look at the body of work that other fighters have, like a Gervonta and those guys, there are guys out here who have fought more named fighters, right? When I say named fighters, I mean guys that are other champions and guys that are at the top of the game in big fights. Crawford's the one knock that he's always had against him is, it's not his fault, but he's with Top Rank for a long time. And before Turkish Alakash, I always mess his name up, but before he got into the game and started making these promoters kind of commingle and deal with each other, you had a lot of cold wars between promoters. So because Crawford was with Top Rank for so long, he didn't get to fight a lot of the PBC guys, right? So a lot of the guys that you would want to see him against historically, he didn't get a chance to fight until Spence, right? So this would be a name that, because of all the bodies that Canelo has, that would solidify Crawford as one of the best post Floyd, yes. But Canelo could argue that, NUA could argue that, and so could Gervonta. But this would definitely give him a good argument, a good piece. Yeah.
So another news topic that is big in the boxing world right now is the fight between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Now, the way I look at this is when Gervonta Davis is done boxing, fans are going to find a new fighter to root for. Promoters are going to find a new fighter to promote. At the end of the day, boxing is prize fighting. And at the end of the day, with boxers, they have to find the biggest prize. And without a doubt, this is the biggest prize. I don't think that says something about boxing, because there are people who say, oh, well, if the biggest draw in your sport is Jake Paul, then what does it say about the sport? I completely disagree with that, because if Allen Iverson, let's just say, for example, when he was at the peak of his popularity, decided, hey, I want to go be a boxer, and he trained and he got some wins under his belt, Allen Iverson would be one of the biggest draws in the sport because it's Allen Iverson. It's the same thing with Jake Paul. Right. So what are your thoughts on the Jake Paul-Gervonta Davis fight, and how do you look at Gervonta Davis with this fight being announced?
Well, you got two sides to that coin, but you explained it pretty well. Today, in today's sports, no matter what sport you're in, this is a social media era, right? So having a guy like Jake Paul be the face of anything is not a knock on the sport, because you build up your own personal fan base and you can take that and monetize it any way you want. He just chose to do it via boxing. So I actually think that that's a good thing for boxing that he did that, because he's using his crowd and his fan base who may not be boxing fans traditionally, and he's bringing them into a venue or into a genre that they may have not been accustomed to traditionally. So that only helps the sport. That can never hurt it. And then beyond that, from a Gervonta standpoint, if you look at it as a fan, I want to see him fight Roach. Obviously, everybody does, right? Because we're boxing fans, we want to see him fight the toughest competition, and Roach has been his toughest competition to date. So from a fan standpoint, yeah, fight Roach, make 10 mil, 15 mil, right? That's how we think of it. And me being a promoter, I can wear multiple hats when it comes to this question. So from a promoter standpoint or a manager standpoint, if Gervonta was my fighter, we go for the money, right? As you said, this is prize fighting. He's going to make maybe 40 to 100 million to fight Jake Paul. Now, if he loses to Roach, that Jake Paul money's not on the table. You get what I'm saying? So, business-wise, it's best for him to go the route that he's going. Is it popular? No. But business-wise, it's the best route to go because not only do you win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter what happens with Jake Paul. Nobody counts that against you. But you make a crazy payday that you probably don't make if you do lose to Roach, who's proven to be able to beat you or be close enough to beat you, right? So if you go and fight Roach again before Jake Paul, you just pretty much burned $100 million. I don't think anybody at home would do that. I don't care how you feel about boxing. You wouldn't do it, right? So I wouldn't ask Gervonta to do that either. That's a smart business play. And then after this, he can go fight Roach for even more money because now you've gotten, as I said, a demographic that naturally probably doesn't really follow boxing as much as they follow Jake Paul. But now that you're interfacing with Jake Paul, you will have some spillovers, as we already know, that will follow Gervonta after this fight. So it only helps any fight that he does, traditional fight that he does after this, by fighting Jake Paul first. I don't like it as a fan, but I do understand it from a business standpoint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, at the end of the day, when it comes down to Gervonta Davis, like you said, all those fights that fans want to see, they're going to be there. If you're a real fan of Gervonta Davis, you should actually like this for him because he's going to be on a bigger scale. People are going to see him more. And then, after that, then he can go fight Lamont Roach or anybody else that he has to fight. And that's ultimately the way I look at this. And by the way, one last thing before we move on to the next topic. Let me just put this into perspective. If you were offered a job where you got paid $2,000 for 2 hours of work, right? And then there's another job where you get paid $500 for 12 hours of work. Which job are you taking? You're taking the job for 2 hours and $2,000. Everybody's going to, that's essentially what is happening here. So if that's the answer to your question, I kind of think you're being hypocritical for going after Gervonta Davis. But that's besides the point. Last topic. So I was a former hardcore boxing fan. I'm more of a casual fan now. Okay. I'm not afraid to admit that. But when it comes to and the thing is, this is the way I look at boxing. So you talk about the IBF and the WBC. I know those belts and unification bouts and all the things that go into it. But I feel like when it comes to boxing, the casual fan base isn't there to the extent that you see with the NFL or the NBA, or even to compare it to a combat sport, the UFC. They've really opened themselves up to the casual fan. What do you think it is with boxing? Because me personally, when you look at the weight divisions and you see these, you have 5-6 guys in a division that have an O next to your name, there's a lack of clarity for me where I'm just like, okay, who's really the best fighter? And then you have multiple belts. So I feel like, to me, lack of clarity is something that I look at and I say, okay, I wish it would be better in that perspective. What do you think would be some moves that boxing could make to attract more casual fans?
Loaded question, but great question. Number one, you're right. There aren't as many casual fans that watch boxing that consume it as much as they used to in the 80s. And that's because boxing now has become this thing where it's been put behind paywalls for years now, pay-per-view, so on. And it's so fractured because it's an individual sport. It's not a team sport. Even though UFC isn't a team sport either, the UFC is a business itself. So boxing is not a business even though people conduct business within it, there's different factions within it that interplay with each other. Whereas Bellator and the UFC might not interplay with each other. They're just two different bodies of work within the MMA space. Boxing promoters have to commingle, right? And you have promoters, to your point when you talked about all the different belts. You have promoters that'll get a champion, and then they'll feed him opponents that are independent of another promoter's stable of fighters, right? So those guys will never meet and never fight in the ring. That creates vacuums and confusion and a lack of clarity in regards to who the best at any given weight actually is. And then you look at certain guys like the Floyd Mayweather and Pacquiao fight took so many years to make, right? Where you might be waiting for a fight to get that answer to that question for 10 years, right? So I do understand why the casuals aren't as excited about it. Then even with your lady, right? You and your lady aren't getting together and saying, "Hey, let's pay $90 to watch a guy that she never heard of," right? Whereas now, with the way boxing's being treated, and there's guys like Turkish, Alakash, Riyadh Season, shout out to those guys. He believes the same thing that I believe in regards to boxing should be easily consumed for the layman consumer. It should be free so that people can consume it more. I think that will bring more casual eyes to the sport. And then the event itself, like when I promote a fight, I'm not promoting fights for the fighting fan. Like if you're a boxing fan, you're gonna come anyway. I'm promoting fights for the wife that comes with the plus ones that are coming with those individuals, because they're the ones that need to be entertained and need to have an experience that will make them repeat. And that's what had been lacking in boxing. It was all boxing centered. So if I was a promoter and you were, let's say my champion, right? I'm riding you to the end, right, Pauls? But I am, right? So I'm not trying to see you go and grow beyond my limitations because you're my cash cow, right? Whereas promoters now, especially in UFC and other sports, they gear it towards the brand rather than the individual fighter. So you don't have things or vacuums like when De La Hoya retires, when Floyd Mayweather retires, when Tyson retires. You have these vacuums, these power vacuums where we don't know who the face of the sport is anymore because we're all centered around these, individuals that are very polarizing. But once they leave the game, you got to replace them with somebody. Whereas if it were a brand where people were watching boxing itself for the event and for the type of events that you're throwing, it makes it a totally different experience and totally different thing. So boxing is transitioning back to that now, which is good. But the damage from being what do you call it? Centralized, I guess. The damage from that, you can see, because that's what you're speaking to now. So hopefully, that we can fast track that. But that's why more layman people don't really watch boxing, because we've put it behind so many different barriers of not only understanding but barriers of entry in regards to pricing as well.
Yeah, no, I think you said a lot of really, really good things there, and I agree with everything you say, because look, to me, I don't think that there is a more entertaining thing than a big boxing match. Like when you talk about the Canelo Alvarez, Terence Crawford fight, that's going to be an event, and that's going to draw in a lot of people. And I think it's actually a great idea that Turkish decided that that was going to be the first fight that he made more accessible to the public, because it's going to be, I think, a great fight. And I think that's going to really start to turn the tide, because I just think sports, yes, is it kind of annoying on social media with some of the discourse that you see from the more casual fans? Sure. But at the end of the day, it helps the sport grow. It helps the fighters in the sport. And just any sport, the athletes benefit from casual fans. So that's what I always pay attention to. Do you have
one more thing?
Yeah.
To your point, too, you got to remember when Sugar Ray Leonard was boxing, when Ali was boxing in the 80s, those guys were coming out in the 80s. Boxing was on ABC every week. It was on public television. You had your pay-per-view events that were major events, but most of the time it was on public television. So having it where the sponsors were looking into these fighters, investing into these fights and so on, it made it a lot easier for the layman to access those fights. So it's not just the fact that the sport itself isn't as entertaining, which I think has changed, but it's the fact that, as I said earlier, you have less access to it.
For sure. So that's going to be it for the CEO Sports Show for today. I appreciate you guys for coming out. Please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and we're going to be making some announcements about this gentleman's show. Very excited for it. It's going to be a fantastic show. Akuya, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and definitely tune in throughout the rest of the year, because boxing is definitely, like I said, one of my passions. So we're going to have fun with this show, man. Let's do it.
Awesome. See you guys next time.